Where were they coming from? They were coming from the perspective of President William Ruto's decree that we are not a saving nation and the 200 shillings is not enough to secure your future with. We went to court and the court stopped it on one basis. There was no public participation. But if we go back to this particular act of 2013, there was only one area again that was not properly worked on. The effect this would have on devolved units. I'm talking about the county workers. So the question today being then, if indeed there is the understanding that 200 shillings is not enough to secure your future, are you ready to pay 2,000? Is that the understanding? And if NSSF by law is a scheme, a savings scheme, is it the best in the country? What we need to understand. I'm happy because indeed today we do have the National Assistant General Secretary, who is the branch secretary, Nairobi staff for the county workers, Festus Ngare. Festus, briefly, before we start the show, is NSSF the best scheme in terms of savings in the country?
Thank you, Elijah, for giving me this opportunity, because NSSF is a debate that Kenyans and workers and contributors are supposed to have a serious conversation. The background is that my union also participated in rejection of the increase from 200 shillings to 2,000, because my union represents over 45,000 employees in this particular country and distributed in various counties in the 47 counties. The reason being that I agree with the judges when they observed that, number one, there was no public participation. We believe that the workers should be the first person to be consulted, because it's a contributory, meaning that they are giving out their money into the scheme.
Yes.
The other aspect is that there are other schemes that exist, and the law currently allows people to belong to a scheme of choice. And the third one is in terms of performance.
Pretty much.
Thank you.
Guess what? We do have Festus Ngare in the studio today. More conversations around those points and many more that is mentioning. Remember, this is Lookup Business. You can join us online at Lookup TV across all your social media platforms. I am at Kiage Simba. Let's get started, shan't we? President William Ruto has called on the United Nations member states to come together to help each other alleviate some of the challenges facing their nations in the face of the climate change and political unrest across the world. In his maiden speech at the United Nations General Assembly, the president made clear some of his plans for Kenya and urged donor nations to extend debt relief to some of the African nations that have been worst hit by the COVID-19 and climate changes. In his maiden speech at the United General Assembly, President William Ruto recognized that majority of African nations were building up their economies, especially after the effects of the pandemic. He took the opportunity to explain his model of the bottom-up economics, which he explained was the best approach, as this population held numbers in the labor conversation, which was key to building back.
Building back better from the bottom upwards is essentially about including the marginalized working majority in the economic mainstream. The bottom millions relentlessly wage their daily battle for survival in a crowded arena characterized by scarcity of opportunity and generally precarious existence. The ingenuity, optimism, resilience, and energy in this ever-bustling bottom is sometimes called hustling. Invisibly to policymakers and beyond the reach of many public services, these hustlers take nothing for granted, surviving overwhelming odds and frequently succeeding greatly.
With the 10 counties in the country already in the red list as those affected heavily by the drought in the country, with 4 million occupants facing acute starvation, Ruto urged for collective conversation and responsibility on climate justice. He further added that achieving Kenya's social development goals was heavily dependent on working towards impact-based conversations that will make food and life bearable for majority.
The northern arid and semi-arid rangelands of our country have been gravely impacted by drought, whose severity has not been seen or experienced in 40 years. 3.1 million residents of these atolls are now severely food insecure on account of scarce rainfall over 3 consecutive seasons, leading to poor crop and pasture. This unprecedented confluence of intensely adverse events has exacerbated water scarcity and starvation, worsened by rising food prices, thus complicating Kenya's roadmap towards delivering good quality of life to our citizens and hindering the progress to achieving SDG number 6 and SDG number 2.
With agriculture standing as the only option for sub-Saharan economy to compete with the globe, Ruto called for sustained efforts towards mechanization of agriculture in the continent while underscoring the need to incentivize farmers so as to promote agriculture. Simba Kiage, Laka Business. As the government seeks to fulfill the promise of providing subsidized fertilizer, farmers in Kisii County are a happy lot after receiving the 10,000 bags of fertilizer to enhance production. Ian Ketani with the details.
Just a week after President William Ruto promised to deliver on subsidized fertilizer during his inauguration, the commodity has been availed to farmers in Kisii as the county received at least 10,000 bags of fertilizer. Most farmers who had planted without fertilizer made their way into the warehouse, saying that the government had given them the opportunity to equalize on their produce.
Ninashukuru serikali yetu kwa kutuletea mbolea. Mimi niliposikia last evening ya kwamba mbolea imefika, imenifanya leo tu nikamkia na nimepata mbolea.
Msimu wa upanzi ulikuwa uanze mwezi wa 8. Hadi sasa wengi hawajapanda. Na wale ambao wamepanda bila mbolea. Sasa hii mbolea ambayo tumeipata leo inaweza ikatusaidia at least kufanya mashamba tuweze kupata chakula.
Doris Megutu, a farmer in the county, urged the government to provide them with CAN for efficient farming.
Serikali imetuonea huruma, imetuletea mbolea kwa bei iliyo chini. Tumekuwa tukinunua mbolea kwa shilingi 6,500 kwa kila bag. Lakini sasa hivi siku hii ya leo nina furaha kuwatangazia wakulima wenzangu ya kwamba kuna mbolea katika huu mji wetu wa Kisii. Ningeomba serikali itusaidie kwa kutuletea mbolea ya CN ambayo itatusaidia kama wakulima ili tukipalilia haya mahindi yetu tuweze kunyunyuzia mbolea ya CN iweze ikatusaidia kuzalisha mahindi mingi.
However, in Nandi County, the subsidized fertilizer is yet to be available, with most farmers exuding confidence that the government will avail the product in due time.
Tumengoja mbolea, tumekuja kwa Agrovet, mbolea bado ni bei ghali sana. Mbolea sasa ni 6,500. Tumengoja mbolea serikali, bado tunangoja. NCPB, Mosoriot, bado tuna matumaini kwamba mbolea yenyewe itafika most probably before the end of next week, as we were promised by our president. So we are very, very hopeful and we pray that utapata mbolea ndio tuweze kupanda mimea zetu.
Na jambo ambalo naomba Wakenya tuwe naye ni subira tu, kwa sababu tulikuwa tumeahidiwa hii wiki na hii wiki haijakamilika, kwa hivyo tuwe na subira.
The farmers indicated that the fertilizers available are still expensive, hoping that the prices will fall even further in the next few months.
ule rais wetu ambaye ni Asla Ruto amesema kwamba mbolea itafika by 3500 by ile 50 kg, but tunaimani by next year January itakuwa 2500 na kila mkulima atakuwa na fursa ya kununua mbolea kwa bei iliyo kwa maduka.
Ian Kitani, Look Up TV.
Ian Kitani. Now, Chief Justice Martha Koome has maintained the Constituency Development Fund, CDF, is illegal. While addressing the senators through a recorded video during their second-day induction retreat in Nakuru, Koome added that the Supreme Court is committed to protecting and defending the devolution of the gains made through a devolved system. Shadrach Arabia with the details.
The senators ate day 2 of their induction retreat in Naivasha, Nakuru County.
In all our committees, is there a way JLAC can then try to consult with the judiciary so that we don't continue wasting public funds?
Chief Justice Martha Koome drew a recorded video called on the senators to play an authoritative role of overseeing and protecting the constitution mandate, the CJ stating that the Supreme Court is committed to defend the devolution.
In the court's protective capacity, honorable members, courts serve to defend fundamental elements of the constitutional order from being altered or destroyed. In such contexts, such as ours, with a history of authoritarian rule.
Koome used the platform to reiterate that the Constituency Development Fund, CDF, is illegal as it interferes with the devolved function of the counties in executing their roles.
It is unconstitutional to allocate funds to the CDF before the division of revenue between the national and county governments. In addition, it was the position of the Supreme Court that the CDF offends the division of functions between the national and county governments to allow a CDF an instrumentality of the national government to undertake functions devolved to the counties. This clearly underscored the separation of power and that delivery of service is devolved to the county.
Koome stated that the courts have been the foremost defender of the devolution, noting that when the devolution was threatened, the court stepped in to defend.
Therefore, I've been at the foremost to defend the devolution. In every instance when devolution has been threatened, the courts have listened to the calling, and specifically the Supreme Court has stepped in to defend the spirit of the devolution. On the 15th May 2020, the Supreme Court rendered an advisory opinion on how the recurrent failure between the Senate and the National Assembly to agree on the division of revenue bill would be resolved.
Shadrach Arabia, Look Up TV.
And I know there's this thing.
Entrepreneurs are now calling on President William Ruto to prioritize women and youth in the planned Hustler Fund disbursement by his government. The women from Kayole, while protesting what they termed as an illegal destruction of their business structures by some leaders in the area, said that the lack of capital has been a major challenge for youth and women-run small enterprises.
Tukumbuke kama sisi wa mama mboga, ulituambia mama mboga utatupoto mab. Sasa venye utatupoto mab, hatuna njia venye tunaweza ku access ya bottom up. Sasa tunataka tuchagulie kiongozi wetu, mama ambaye atakuwa akitusimamia, kama wakutuletea pesa, akitupata pesa atatuambia, tukipata shida anakuambia mambo tunafanya nini tunapata. Tunajua ulichagua cabinet. Wakati ulichagua cabinet, hukuchagua mama mboga hapo kwa cabinet yako. Tunataka cabinet awe wa mama mboga kutoka hapa Kayole, ama asimamie hiyo pesa yenye ulikuwa umesema zenye zinaitwa hasra, pesa ya hasra.
Kwa ile cabinet yake anaweza tuwekea mama mboga mmoja ndio awe anakubuka wa mama juu akiwa mahali pale atakuwa akikubuka ile shida tunapatananga nayo tukiwa hapa. Kama tukiwa hapa hatuna pesa anajua. Kwa hivyo akiingia pale kwa ile kabineti yake atakuwa akiwaeleza na anakubusha. Wale wa mama hawananga pesa. Kwa hivyo tunaweza saidika kwa hiyo.
Kitu tunahitaji sana from our excellence president Dr. William Ruto. Tujichagulie sisi mwenye atakuwa atapresent hao mama wa mboga. Ili shida zao tangu kule ziishe, we have never seen anybody in this place. Watu wanakaa kwa magari ndani, tangu waapishwe hakuna mtu anaonekana kutetea wamama. Hiyo ndio jambo letu kubwa ya kulia kilio ya kusikika.
All right, on that note, let's look at how the markets are looking before we get into our bigger conversation today on whether you think NSSF deduction should rise all the way to 2,000 shillings. All right, let's begin with the gainers this morning. And remember, it's been almost 2 hours and 22 minutes of trading. And let's see whether they've really changed from what they were yesterday. Not so much of a change if going by the data that we have here is anything to go by, because I can see we do have Nation Media Group again coming in at 18 shillings and 10 cents, and that representing a 7.74% change in terms of that top 5 gainers list. We do have Sasinia as well that is coming in at 24 shillings and that representing 7.38% change. So not so much really in terms of the movements on the NSE, and this is what we say, that right now, all the way after the liquidity that we saw in the market immediately after and before the elections, it's now really settling down because we haven't seen really much of changes in this top gainers list as well. All right, let's move on then to what is going to be our top losers list as well. And what we're checking here is exactly how the markets have trended since yesterday. I do have a bit of a challenge then with my videos right here, and I promise that once we do have that data, then I'll be playing it to you as well so we can check on how the markets are looking at the moment. All right, let me jump into the biggest movers, yes, which is going to be a proper indicator as we move away from the top losers list. Safaricom is coming in at 6,238,800 shares traded. That again has been what we've been seeing from Safaricom. So NCBA is not here in this top 5 movers list because we saw yesterday, yes, they were the bigger boys in terms of that with 5 million shares traded. KCB is coming in at 2.5 million shares traded. KPLC has now officially got off the million mark. Yes, we are settling down. We are now at 798,000 shares traded as of end of trading yesterday. Cooperative is closing that list at 430,300.